Welcome, everybody, back to Veil of Sound on our regular Sunday interview. And we have a guest here from a band that has come back like Lazarus from the grave, or Phoenix from the flames, or whatever bad analogy you want to come up with. I'm very happy to have David from Kerretta here on the show with us. So, David, thanks for joining.
Yeah, you're very welcome, mate.
Yeah, so the first question that we always ask, and I'll give you a moment to think about it. Is there any kind of band merch, shirt, music from yourself or from a friend's band or project that you would like to plug here right now? While you can think about it, I like to plug my shirt of the day, Noorvik from not Norway, but Cologne, one of the nice post-rock bands from my hometown. So, David, anything that you would like to plug? Of course, obviously Kerretta, but maybe anything else.
Um, oh gosh, well, I mean, I work in a busy studio, so there's so much music coming sort of around me and through me all the time. But the thing that I guess jumps to my mind is a recent release by a jazz violinist called Johanna Burnheart, and the album's called Bear, which would be AR, but I think it might actually be. I'm not sure if it's German or where it's from, but it means beer, like And I worked on a record with her about a year and a half ago, which came out recently, and I just think it's a phenomenal record. Interesting polyrhythms, beautiful textures and melodies, and yeah, out on vinyl as well. So
Cool.
yeah.
So here you already have a little glimpse into what makes the band outstanding. I think it's a real cool mixture of sounds and soundscapes. But we'll come to the new record in a moment. The next question that we always ask is like, where are we catching you right now, David?
Right. So we're actually in my studio, which is where I work and actually live here as well. Um, I guess the most interesting and obvious thing about this studio is that it's actually built inside a ship, called an old lightship called Lightship 95, that has been converted over the years to quite an elaborate recording studio. Three studios actually nowadays. Plus there's living apartments on board and all sorts of stuff. So it's quite a little village. We're sat in the control room. You can kind of actually the best thing to do is you can see some portholes up there. So we've got some lovely natural light. And then through the wall that way is the big live room and booths and stuff like that. So
Interesting is
actually
the
early
fact
morning.
that you go ahead. You go ahead. What did you want to say?
I was just saying you're catching me early morning at work, essentially.
Yeah. And interesting is that you and the studio are located in London, whereas the rest of the band is in New Zealand. So
Yes.
how does
Yeah.
that work?
Well, you have to be patient. You have to not be too rushed with the progress. Just accept that it's going to be slow and measured, and that you might be waiting, 12 hours for a response on something quite often. Yeah, the band has to sort of really fit in around that. And kind of fortunately it has, but it does sort of explain a lot about sort of the stop and start nature of what we've been able to do, especially in the last 10 or 15 years as Kerretta.
Well, it's interesting that you say stop and go nature of a band. This is the first like real long break in the band's history. I've seen that you're now going on what 18 years, 17 years as a band in existence, and you had not had such a long break in between releases as now. It's really 10 years. Although, of course, in 2018, Golden Antenna released the compilation Exit Sense, if I remember correctly.
That's it.
But that was no real new music. So the
Yeah.
obvious question and the elephant in the room is, how did these 10 years happen, apart from the long distance relationship?
Um, I mean, I think it's a number of factors really. we, I guess personally, had stuff going on, people having families, and you sort of have to sort of prioritize that for a number of years. Of course, the pandemic kind of slam dunked right in the middle there, which kind of just sort of, you know, if we did have some sort of senses of plans around then, they couldn't happen. I became very busy with what I was doing professionally over here and with the environment that I'm in now, which took a good 2 or 3 years of fairly determined effort and work that didn't leave a lot of space for too much else for me personally at that time. Um, and it was always sort of uh, because I've been living over in the UK since sort of 2012. Since then, it's always been a little bit of a when we can do things, we'll do things, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll fit around us rather than the other way around. I guess it's never been we've never really been in a place where we can go, yeah, we're a full-time band. This is what we do. We're just going to constantly tour, constantly put music out. Um, I think that also the sort of music that we do is quite it takes a long time for us to arrive at things that we find interesting. I mean, I think at the core of what Kerretta means to us, it's trying to find things that we are not sure what they mean, until the record's released, and then you can kind of reflect
Mm-hmm.
on it in that objective way that when you're in it, it's hard to tell. Um, so, I mean, I don't think there was any deliberate sort of pause button hit. I think just time just raced past, and by the time 4 years has gone past, it's like, well, it's been 4 years. We should do something soon. Yeah, 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 we'll do something soon. And it was my bandmate Hamish that really kind of pushed the start button in a major way on this record to get it going. I think, like I said, I've been very kind of smothered in what I'm doing here, and if it was left to me, it would probably be another 10 years.
So then we're glad that Hamish found that start button.
Oh yeah.
Um, but there has never been a time when you considered the band done.
No, I mean, I don't see the point in that necessarily. It can. I think it's always been something that for us has been a real pleasure to do when we're able to do it. And keeping it in that framing, I feel like is really healthy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think as soon as it becomes, I work with a lot of bands, and I work with a lot of bands that put a lot of pressure on themselves to work as hard as they can to not necessarily fast track, but they want to do everything right and take all the correct steps to kind of to climb that ladder to get to a point where what they're doing feels recognized and acknowledged and meaningful to more than just them. I mean, we have that inherently in a way, of course, but it's always felt like something that um, when it complements just our lives and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
sort of define them in a way, then um, that's how it works. That's how it's worked for us, to be able to kind of manage the life priority kind of thing. And the positive, I guess, byproduct of that is that um, we don't find ourselves getting real itchy when something hasn't happened for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes me think, in that 10 years, like actually a huge amount has changed in the way that people are releasing music, marketing music, and all that sort of stuff. So feeling like the old dogs in the room now, it's been a bit of a yeah, well, it's been a bit of a lesson of like, okay, we have to take this social media stuff more seriously. We have to kind of realize that if we're gonna reach new people that might be into what we're doing,
Yeah.
the old methods are not necessarily going to be as tried and tested as they once were. Um, we are going to have to engage online in a different way, and we are going to have to get out there and play some shows. Because if you can't play music, then for us it's a bit yeah. What's the point? um,
Mhm.
yeah.
So to get like the last question about that hiatus, and especially about the end of it out, you've already hinted at it, like things have changed and you've described yourselves as the old dogs or the veterans in the scene. But how did it feel to get back into band mode? How did it feel to get together in the way that you guys get together and then start writing new stuff?
Um, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like it wasn't easy.
Mhm.
Um, it was it was very different to the way it's been
Mhm.
done before. I mean, you can kind of if I imagine looking back through our all of our catalog, um, the way that our first, two or three releases were, even the small releases, I mean, were done compared to where we are now with the way that we create and produce music. Um, I mean, it's unrecognizable. It's completely different. We very much
Mhm.
used to be the guys that would get up and go and rehearse before work. We'd be like,
Mhm.
6 or 7 a.m., go to the rehearsal room,
Mhm.
bash out 2 or 3 hours, and then we'll go to work.
Mhm.
So the work ethic was like that, and it very much existed in the room. And then when it was time to record something, it was pretty simple because we would just go to a studio and set up and play the song, and then
Yeah.
it would be that's it. And I tried to pride myself in doing as much kind of real time, exciting, elaborate guitar stuff all on the pedal board with no overdubs. That was kind of my initial thing was like, I want to do that. I want to use multiple amps. I want to make sounds um, that don't necessarily sound exactly like normal guitar stuff. And I want to make a big
Mhm.
sound with one guitar. That was how I operated. So it was really important to me that all of that production you might do in a record all happened then. And then when we recorded it, it was a few mics in front of instruments and amps and
Yeah.
drums, and you would be able to just get it in a take or two. Um, Fast forward to now, and yeah, it's been completely mangled, deconstructed, repurposed. There's no real rules. There's just what we like and what we don't like, and we don't know what that is until we do it. So
Mhm.
um, I think if I think about how this record was made, and you talk about what it's like to get back together in band mode, um, I think we kicked off production on this record. I think it was like at the end of 2020. It was far ago as that. So that's 4 years ago, pretty close to
Mhm.
now. So whilst it's been 10 years, this record has taken us 4 years to put together. Um, no, there's no period of like constant like days and days and days and days in a row. There's just been dipping in and out of it when we've been able to do it, and a lot of gestation time. Um, I mean, you probably have some questions about like making this particular record at some stage, but the way that we made it was very, very different to the way I think any record I've heard of has been made, or at least that I've been involved with.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and I think in that entire time since 2020, we've spent a sum total of 5 days in the same room together. Um, when Hamish was able to come over to London, when he was traveling with his family, he broke up a little bit of time, and he came at quite a crucial time when I was trying to like nail a lot of like difficult guitar stuff.
Mhm.
And we sat in this very room together, and we were like, okay, cool. Hey, it's nice to see you in flesh. Should we make some noise? But even then, he didn't pick up some drumsticks and that. It was just that stuff was all done. Um, but it did feel good. It kind of felt like, oh my God, this reminds me of what it used to be like. You'd play something and someone would go, yes, bro, fuck yes, that thing. And you go, okay, cool. I wasn't sure, but yeah, now that you're encouraging me, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the shot in the arm at that point. I mean, that was 18 months ago or something now, but it was a really crucial time when that happened, and it really helped the record suddenly go from quite like for me an abstract, nebulous sort of collection of sounds to like something that had form and shape and contour. Yeah.
So then I take it that, you know, there might be another stage for Kerretta when you then get back on tour, which will probably happen when next year?
I think so. Yeah, it'll be next year. We're not too sure on dates yet. We've got quite a lot of sort of personal spinning plates, so we're working hard to nail down exactly when we think that's going to be, and we're super excited to do it. Um, we might we're contemplating doing some sort of like a little series of shows in New Zealand actually, at some point in the second half of in the last part of this year. Again, don't
Mhm.
know exactly when that will be, but that will be a really nice thing to do for me as well, to return home to New Zealand and to get back in a garage, with the guys, and actually see, see if we can play this new record for a start. I mean, a lot of it is very ambitious music. Um, and like I say, when we were putting it together, we weren't, or at least I wasn't thinking about like, oh yeah, what kind of like tap dancing is this going to be on the pedal board to make these sounds come to life? Um, so I didn't think about that, and now I'm beginning to think about that and going, okay, this will be some work to get us. And also
Yeah,
the
you
old
might.
songs. I mean, there's some songs in there I probably haven't played on the guitar for far too long. So it's nice. It's really nice to revisit them though, and yeah, reimagine them a little bit perhaps.
But I hear some kind of excitement about it, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think again, like I spend pretty much every day in the studio helping people, working with people on their music, and you get a little bit envious, and you go to gigs and you think, I used to do that. Now I really I want to do that. I want to go
When
back
I
out.
was a young man.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and going on tour is, there's absolutely nothing in the world like it. To see different places, to meet so many people. Every show is different, and I get a lot out of it. It feels nutritious.
Mhm. Yeah, like nurturing in a very, very positive, soulful way. That's true.
Yeah.
Um, Something that has always struck me about Kerretta, throughout all the years, is the fact that you are not only a band based in New Zealand, but you always seem to me like a band who is very proud of coming from New Zealand, because a lot of the names on tracks or on the record titles itself, like the last record was called Pirohia. I'm not even sure if I pronounced that correctly. The new one is called Angelm or Angelm. I don't know. You have to
Hmm.
correct me on that.
Hmm.
But it always seemed as if you're really proud of that. Is that something where you say, like, okay, yeah, we also want to show a little bit off of our highly diverse culture?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're not singular in that sense. I think there's a lot of fantastic music from New Zealand that's very proudly, um, yeah, displaying what's great about New Zealand, both in a sort of tangible landscape kind of sense, open spaces, beautiful scenery, rugged coasts and beautiful jungles and forests and beaches and all the rest of it. The diversity of city life and the general sort of calm feeling that you have there compared to perhaps other places. Especially in like the kind of in the sort of the metal, post rock kind of community as well. It's kind of like a perfect inspirational kind of um not canvas, but like a thing to be inspired by,
Mm.
and to think of if you're doing music, especially music that doesn't hinge upon vocals. There's and you don't have to kind of go, here is what the words are, which mean this. You can let the music paint different imagery every time someone wants to listen to it. Um, And yeah, I think we are proud of it. It's sort of a point of difference. Like why not like imbibe the music with that? Um, and it doesn't even feel like a conscious decision to do that. Um, think we don't think so much about, astral kind of otherworldly stuff when there's just so much interesting stuff kind of right around
Mm.
where you are. I live in grubby old London, and so to make music that I feel takes me to somewhere with like a peaceful but strong sea breeze, for example. Um, it's what I want to do. It's what I want to hear. I don't want to make something that feels like too familiar. I like that the band these days makes music that is has that transportative quality to it.
Mm.
Um, and this record for sure, there's been a big effort to do that. Um, and whilst there's themes of New Zealand stuff distinctly across it, we have really tried to kind of think more about everywhere else as well. So it does have quite um, a global point of view. Yeah.
We'll come to that in a moment because I also wrote that down for me when I prepared the interview. But first, you have been talking about, the influence of New Zealand as like the inspirational point. Are there any other like real influences where you say like, okay, I really like this band. I'm not copying them, but I like some of their things, some of the sounds or soundscapes they're producing, and I try to do something similar.
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that question without the most obvious one, which is the band Jacob, which I'm sure you're
Yeah.
aware of. Who are really, really old friends of mine. We all grew up in the same small city on the east coast of the North Island in New Zealand. And I was part of making their early records when I was running studios back in New Zealand. Um, and from yeah, for me when I was young, they're not that much older than me these days. It doesn't really make any difference. But back then they were sort of a couple of years older than me, had done a bit more stuff, and the sounds that Jeff, the guitarist, was making. I mean, not just me, everyone around me that played guitar, we were all just in awe of what Jeff managed to do. He would play guitar in a way that sounded like an orchestra, and yeah. Well, I'll talk about me. I was always just so floored by it, and the sheer dynamic of it, and the sensitivity, the ferociousness, all of these things. Now, I would never say that I'm trying to mimic what what he or what Jacob doing as a band because I couldn't, even if I really really wanted to. And I've sat there and thought, oh, I could probably do something like that, and it never works. And ultimately, you don't really want to have to do that. You want to just find your own thing. But I guess the non-standard approach of like this is what a rock band could be. Back in we're talking like the late '90s, early noughties. Um, that was the profound influence. The idea that you didn't have to just write things in verse, chorus out. You didn't have to use the normal tuning. You didn't have to use the normal sounds. There were no real rules to it. And if you kept following that thread, you eventually found yourself in your own construct of things that made sense to you and given more time become unique to you. And hopefully you sort of wind up in that position that you recognize in someone else like Jeff and go, cool, he's done that. Maybe I'm doing something that's the same sort of thing, but obviously my version of it. So that would be definitely Jacob. I mean, yeah, I miss those guys a lot. Like everyone else on the planet, I wish that they would put more music out as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's hard, I think anyone that's doing something that feels like it belongs just to them, it's hard to really understand when you think you've got something that creatively fits into the canon that you've got and um pushes it further forward without kind of going too silly. I think in Kerretta we don't necessarily have as many we've sort of given ourselves free rein to not have any limitations on stuff. So there is definitely some sounds on this new record that every time I hear them, I'm like, seriously? But I love them. But they surprise me every time, and I like that. I don't take it all too seriously necessarily. I like fun surprises. Um, I like something that one day I love it, and the next day I feel a bit embarrassed about it. I enjoy all of those responses from it because it makes me think I don't know what anyone's going to think about this, and then maybe it'll be polarizing, and maybe odd people that I would never think would be interested in it might be like, this is totally great. So um, yeah, I think I went off course a little bit there, but yeah.
No, no, I totally get what you mean. And I can see that. I can see that, even without trying to emulate somebody, it can influence you in your approach. And then at the same time, you also have to measure yourself against, if you have a band with a backlog like yours, a catalog like yours, then you also measure yourself against that.
Yeah.
Do you see clear differences between Angelm and, for example, the last record, Pirohia?
Yes, I do.
Good, because I do too. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
yeah.
wondering.
Oh well, I'd be interested to hear what you're going to say. I mean, it's hard
Uh,
when you're right in it, and it's objectivity is what you crave, and it's the hardest thing to get, and you often don't get it until, well, for me, I don't necessarily get it with a Kerretta record until sometimes years after the fact to look back and go, man, that's cool. I didn't realize that's what this was, but that's how I feel it is now, and I like it. Um,
okay, so if anybody asks me, first of all, I'm not thinking in terms of better or worse, because every record has its own, how should I say, its own meaning and existence, and I think that is very important that we also remember that. Um, I think the record is very diverse, especially if you take into consideration that the first track is basically an industrial one.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's a little notch harder than the earlier stuff, but that could also just be my own perception of it.
No, I think that's fair to say. I think the harder parts are probably harder, and at the same time, the more delicate parts I think are much more delicate. Um,
Mhm.
I think there's been less effort if we're talking about the new record now. Um, there's been less effort to have it feel like a familiar like rock record. Like we've not kind of gone, that's what guitars sound like, that's what drums sound like, that's what bass sounds like. It's
Yeah.
been very much it needs to feel right.
Yeah.
And however we get there is um not necessarily relevant.
Mhm.
There hasn't been like a that's the guitar rig and I'll just plug into that and that's what the guitar sounds will be. There's there's
Mhm.
there's just no continuity with given to that at all. And that's partly because of the really lengthy production time. Um Spending such a long time putting something together means if I'm feeling inspired to write something and track it on a day, I might just go and grab half a dozen things off the shelf that I think maybe these will be the boxes that'll make some nice noises,
Mhm.
and whatever guitar is nearby. And then that becomes it. And if I
Mhm.
try it any other way, it's like, well, it's not quite the same. Um, so yeah, and I think the harder part of it, I think, there is, you mentioned there's no real new music on the B sides, the last Golden Antenna
On
exists.
existence, yes.
Yeah. But there are a couple of tracks on there that do actually count for new writing between Pirohia and Angelm.
Okay.
Um, as in like they were tracks that were we wrote and recorded in a kind of a similar way to the new record. As in, drums all tracked in New Zealand, demoed up somehow, drums all tracked in New Zealand, and then everything else I've done over here.
Mhm.
So again, not really any major time spent, no time at all spent together in the same room. Things like Chroma Queens, and I can't remember there's one more on there I think that's sits in that same camp of like we need to put a new song out. Let's just put a new song out.
Mhm.
But they kind of were early working methods that sort of established that yeah, okay, this is actually possible. We can do new music in the way that we're able to.
Mhm.
It's going to be like this. Is it? it doesn't necessarily feel massively satisfying at the time because you don't get to just be in the room and kind of feel it with volume and feel it with that kind of immersion that you would
Yeah.
ordinarily get. But what it does do, especially from my perspective, is it gives me all the time that I need to kind of
Mm.
deep dive into sounds,
Yeah.
especially with lots of the kind of more complex pitch delay kind of work that I like to do, which takes like an enormous amount of time to get right. Making sure that playing one note here and then whatever subdivision later, it's going to come back at a different interval, and then whatever subdivision after that, there'll be a third, and setting what those notes are going to be, and then creating patterns that ultimately make the riff. It takes a lot of time, but I hadn't really been able to do that to that extent on previous records. There was too much of an urge to make guitar parts that were more guitar party with some of those effects, of course, but like some of those, yeah, I think there's at least two songs on that B-sides record where I really explored that a lot and got to lots of overdubs. Wasn't worried about condensing it down to a minimum number of guitar parts, just like any sound I wanted to do. So there's songs where there's lots of percussion ideas which they're not anything more than just me like hitting things on guitar pickups with lots of interesting delays, creating all of these rhythmical
Mm.
polyrhythms and behind the drums. And they're not something that put their hand up in the mix and go, listen to me, aren't I a weird sound? But there's no other way you would arrive at that sound. And you certainly would get to that sound without having that kind of time. I might be sitting on a laptop in my bedroom doing this kind of stuff with the pedal plugged in at 1 a.m. kind of thing. And yeah, I think it forces a type of creativity that you don't necessarily arrive at in any other way, because you would go to a rehearsal room, you would plug in, tap, 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 and then you would kind of be like locked into that without that opportunity to be like, hit pause, I'm just going to spend 40 minutes following this thread and seeing where it goes. And if it goes nowhere, fine. But sometimes it's like, that's the central, like the pivotal sound in the song. I've now found that one. And this new album is full of that kind of stuff.
Mm. It is. You say that these things might not be audible at first, and I agree. But there is something, and that's something that you mentioned. It is a very dense record. One will be able to hear details on this record that you haven't had on the first, second, 100th spin in years. I totally get that. You have said that although, of course, New Zealand is like the inspiration and the canvas, or has been the inspiration and canvas, you have also been trying to think a little bit more globally, in a little wider perspective. And I think that also here reflects in some of the track titles. You have something like Oceania, Eurasia, until the Atlas, which can, of course, be meant as a reference to Greek mythology or to the Atlas mountain range in Africa. So that was something where you wanted to go, like come up with different track titles, with different ideas, different inspirations.
Yeah, it was. I think the best way to answer that. So when we decided, kind of during the pandemic, that we did want to put together a new record, Hamish and I had to really think about how we were going to do that. Like what had kind of happened in the past might be, I would have a play on a guitar and create a bunch of different sounds and make a few different riffs and ideas, send over a load of MP3s, and he would listen to them and maybe send back some drum ideas, or vice versa. He'd be like, "Here is this beat. It's interesting. What do you think?" And that's how some of those in between songs did come about. With this new record, we decided that we would actually write a framework with which to compose within, to give ourselves some workable parameters that would help to kind of encourage and guide the process. Otherwise, you're just sort of steering with this kind of music where anything goes. It can be very, very hard to find any kind of first foothold in a song because yeah. So having something that yeah, gave us those set parameters for different songs, and we're able to carve up a record and go, right, there is going to be 8 tracks. What how should we represent what these 8 tracks could be about? I mean, it's a very loose term. And so you're right. There's we allude a lot to something on a more global sense. And Hamish's idea was like, why don't we think about tectonic plates on the Earth? There are 7 of them, but there's a new scientific argument that there is actually an 8th one called Zealandia, which is good. So we thought, okay, let's loosely base each of these pieces off a tectonic plate, with whatever that might mean, as abstracted as we like, or as literal as we feel. So some of them, like Oceania, is quite literal. You know, it's like you think of the Pacific Ocean, you think of untouched nature, da, da, da. So that song, that was quite an easy one in that sense to evoke. It's like I know exactly what I want this to feel like. So a lot of it kind of wrote itself in a way that some of the other ones didn't necessarily do. And then some of the other ones, like the opening track, Pan Ultima, which was kind of loosely on the Antarctic plate. A really good friend of ours who used to skipper boats that went down to Antarctica did a journey down there once upon a time and took a load of recording equipment. And so he furnished us with some really beautiful high definition recordings that he made in the Antarctic waters. And so we had oodles of really cool sounds of just creaking and cracking and these strange whistling noises that you get when icebergs are just sort of being icebergs, I guess. And we always thought that would be the opening track, and wanted it to feel like a soundscape, wanted it to feel like something that was a curious way to start, to hopefully people with the attention spans can sit through it and go, okay, where is this going? and then give them a nice surprise. An interesting thing about that track is it was the main kind of guitar riff, if you can kind of call it that, was actually something from way before Pirohia, during a tour that we did around then, where at the end of it, we'd supposed to do some shows in Russia, but we had some visa problems, so we couldn't. So we found ourselves with a few days at the end of that tour, and we just holed up near Timo from Golden Antenna's place in Germany. Went to a little garage there, and just sort of had some jams for a few days, because we hadn't really done that, because I'd been living overseas for quite a long time. And a lot of the writing or the jams from that few days became lots of Pirohia. But we always had this little bit of guitar riff that I think Hamish really became attached to. Really liked its strange little buzzing noise, and it's hard to kind of figure out rhythm, you know. So we thought, let's use that as a central kind of thing and just build some interesting sounds around it. So it's got, like, you know, samples of water dripping sounds from icebergs and little kind of strange meters. There's some things moving in 6s, moving in 5s, moving in 4s, that all kind of gradually gather a bit more momentum until the sort of rhythm, you know, comes through. Yeah, so that's just a little deep dive into the kind of process that a lot of the songs went through, to give a sense of. I mean, that one's quite a literal one. It's got sounds from Antarctica in it. It's got some seal cubs at the end doing some little whispers and noises. Most of the other ones aren't quite as literal as that, and you have to kind of look really, I don't know, in a kind of an obtuse way to see if you can spot why we've linked it. But like I say, it was the parameter that we thought, let's do it. And maybe the parameter is modal, maybe it's polyrhythmic, maybe it's to do with something actually historic about that area. Um, it's yeah, it was enough to kind of establish that framework. I think
Um,
well, there's one more thing to add there. The other thing that was like profoundly different, and part of this framework is that the entire record was begun with writing uh, the drum parts, and in fact recording them too. So most of the drums were all recorded long before there was any sort of melodic stuff established or properly established, um, which for me was super different, but really quite cool. Ultimately, it was difficult, but yeah.
what is also interesting is that the record cover is, I mean, like you always had a knack for very intriguing covers, but this one kept me even baffled a little bit more. I mean, like of course, I saw those eight, all somewhat like a diamond or a lozenge kind of shape, different textures, different colors, and of course, I then also recognize the tectonic plates that you might be talking about. But there is something about it that I don't want to say don't understand, but the color choices, that is something now when I look at it again right now, it's the color choices. Who came up with the cover, with the choices, with the forms? Who did that?
So that's we've had a long time relationship with our friend Mike Chalberg, who does all of the visual design elements for all the records and t-shirts and everything. And we quite enjoy giving him free reign. So we give him a copy of, a working copy of where the record's at, and to give him a sense of what it's sort of all about, I
Mhm.
suppose. And then we let him just go for it. Um, I think I personally don't have like a hugely visual um, sense when it comes to music. Like
Mhm.
I'm not one of those people that's like immediately thinking lots of, I don't, I if I was left to make an album cover for this, I wouldn't know where to start. But
Mhm.
that's not my area, and that's
Mhm.
very much Mike's. And I like giving him, that total creative control. I mean, we went back and forth on a couple of things, um, and some of the color stuff, and sometimes it just locks. You sort of finally see one, and then these are slight tweaks between iterations. You just see one that kind of goes, yeah, that feels like it kind of encompasses it and seals it all up in a world that's going to um, be thought provoking enough. I like the idea that there's some iconography that feels innerworldly and otherworldly. I don't know what they're supposed to mean either. I don't mind that. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not even sure that Mike would know. Perhaps he would, but um, I enjoy that there's eight icons or eight tracks.
Mhm.
Um, they you can pour over them, you can rotate them, you can sort of try and imagine what they might represent.
Mhm.
Uh, whether they're purely abstracted, whether they're a vibration thing, whether they're overlays of stuff, which if you could separate them out, suddenly an image would appear. Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it works within. It's kind of a satisfying thing when you look at your catalog and put them all out and go, yeah, there is a continuity here visually, and
Mhm.
that's down to Mike and committing to his design vision on it and not interfering too much. Um, yeah.
But Mike is not the one who created the video for Eyes in the Bull Temple.
No. That's another he's another old friend of ours though, um, who's made um who's made videos for us in the past. And it's the exact same thing. It's um I really love the collaboration on it.
Mhm.
Um I wouldn't want to. I'm not best placed to sort of micromanage something like that, in spite of like feeling like I probably should. The only reason I feel like I would is in order to make sure there's enough, whatever it is that we need for online for the marketing end of things.
Mhm.
But in terms of like having someone put their own creative vision and time and effort into it, I'm interested to see what they pull out of it and what they put together from it. Um, Again, I don't. If it's left to me, it would probably be some horrific CGI mess of over the top weird. So I'm thankful it's not left up to me. Dawson, I'm just going to shut the door. I can hear a lot of noise upstairs. I'll be one
No
second.
problem.
Okay.
And something that I like about the video, and I'm not sure how easy it was to do for you guys. You basically cut a 5.5 minute track into 250 something.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know. Like, cut downs, radio edits. They're sort of a necessary evil, I suppose. With that one, we just sort of thought, just cut the whole second half of the song, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, the version on the record's longer still. There's like a whole other sort of strange section that comes at the end. There's like a sort of a fake ending. But we kind of thought, look, if we do this, it's just this short, punchy, like statement piece at that point. It's saying, "Hello, we're still here." We've not gone away. This thing's got some good cardio vibes to it.
Yeah, it's not a flat line. Yes,
it's not a flat line. It's hopefully thrilling, and I think the video, is just got some good intensity. That's also got some curiosity to it. It's got some stuff that I feel like plays a little bit into the visual elements that exist. Warren used it's all in camera effects, and he had a collection of these really interesting warped old fossils that he was doing macro photography of and stuff like that, which kind of feels like, yeah, great, that's from the dirt. That's nice. And then lots of humanity. I mean, that's an interesting song. I think the second, it's only the second ever song on a Kerretta record that's got the human voice on it. Yeah. So
although it's human voice, not vocals, I think that should be clear. It's not lyrics.
It's not no, it's not. I mean, we did write down the phonetics of what we wanted, but no, it's not words. Yeah.
Would you? I'm like thinking of touring. Would you perform that track live?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But there wouldn't be. I mean, there's something like 80 odd channels of vocals on that song. We wouldn't pretend to be able to do a version of that would make any sense. And I think the riff is fine. It's big enough as it is to kind of just be a punchy, quick little song that's blows the cobwebs off.
Yeah.
It would be great to imagine how it could be represented with the vocal, but I think it would be super weird for us to have a playback of that going at the same time. As much as I like the sound of it.
You might teach your audience the lines, and then you have your 80-person choir. But I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
So, David, first of all, thanks for all the cool details into the new record and all the thought process that went into it. The explanation for the 10 years. But there is one more question that I have to ask before the infamous quickfire round, and that is also having to do with 10 years gone by. You are now releasing on Dunk. And I think, are you also releasing on 1,000 Arms in America then? Probably,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So this is the first record in, I don't know how many years, that you are not releasing through Timo and Golden Antenna Records. How does that feel for you?
I mean, it's bittersweet, you know. It's fantastic to be part of Dunk and Thousand Arms, and they've been nothing but super supportive about the new record and really encouraging and just really easy to talk to deal with. And yeah, we're thrilled for it, and we're excited to the opportunities that will hopefully come from that partnership. Um, but then at the same time, you know, Timo is more than a record label. You know, to
Mm.
us, he is, you know, he's solely responsible for so much for the band continuing and the band being able to tour and his ability to just make stuff happen for us and his like tireless effort coming on tours with us, you know, driving the van and all that kind of stuff, letting us stay at his house, mucking up his spare rooms and all this sort of stuff. Um, when you're coming from New Zealand and you find yourself in the middle of, you know, North Germany at this lovely man's house who's got everything ready for you and has paved the way and made it so easy. I mean, you know, we'll be forever indebted to him. It's I can't speak highly enough about him and the collaboration, and that's why it is really sad um to not be able to do it. But you know, he's still our best mate. He's still going to be, you know, on the emails, on the phone. He's gonna, you know, we go to him for advice. He's still very much a huge character in our story, and I hope, you know, I'm sure will remain that way. So yeah, it's an evolution of sorts, and yeah, I don't want to. It sounds trite, but sort of it is what it is. You know, we would still
Yeah.
definitely just be, there's no doubt. Um, but everyone, you know, it's a nice community. Everyone kind of knows everyone a little bit anyway. So for us to be jumping around like we have, it doesn't feel sort of too weird at all. You know, it was all quite natural. And you know, Hamish, you know, my collaborator, that he's sort of on top of all of that stuff. I sort of get the emails and give a thumbs up, but I'm not that end of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for all the insight. Also a shout out to Timo and everything that he has done over the last couple of years slash nearly decades. Not only for Kerretta, but also for a lot of other bands that we highly love and respect. And also not thinking about how successful the band or the project he is supporting with all his heart at that moment might be. That is something that he definitely had or has. But David, nobody leaves the Veil of Sound interview without going through the infamous quickfire round. Neither do you. I will not repeat for everybody out there, you know, the choices that he gets, you know, you all know how it works. Let's talk about touring. If you could choose to go on tour right now, would you rather tour the US or Europe?
Europe.
Why? I mean,
Uh,
apart from the fact that we're cooler, that we are not trying to get an orangutan a second time in office.
yeah. Well, I guess off the bat, it's just we've done quite a lot of touring in Europe, and it's always been smooth and just doable and welcoming, and people, you know, people are really supportive. It's easy to get around. The roads are good. Everyone gives you somewhere to stay. You get there. I mean, it's just everything about it is just really great and positive. When we've toured in the States, it's incredibly long drives for very small money. Everything costs a lot. The food's shit. It's all difficult.
Mm.
Um, having said that, I mean, we would love to go back again. It's just such a huge undertaking for a band that's not from the States
Mm.
to go to the States. And you need a lot more support behind you to really pull it off, I think. Whereas Europe works for us. We know how to do it. And yeah, no hesitation.
You have been talking about Jacob, and I mean, like, we all want new music from Jacob,
Mm.
better sooner than later. But I'll give you two of our albums to choose from. Would you rather listen to right now, to Solace or to Zenith?
Solace.
Mhm. Yeah, the masterpiece.
Mm.
Same structure with Russian circles. Enter or guidance?
I'm afraid to say I don't really know Russian circles that well. So you tell me which one I should go and listen to, and I'll listen to that.
If you want to go for the older stuff, then you go for Enter. That would also be that was my entry point for Russian circles. Enter
I did see them last year in London though, and really enjoyed it. So, but I've have to admit I don't. I couldn't tell you which album was my favorite.
Mm-hmm. You live in the shoegaze center of Europe, London. A lot of shoegazy bands that were there, that are there. I'll give you 2 shoegaze classics, although I know one is not from London. But My Bloody Valentine versus Slowdive.
My Bloody Valentine.
Why?
More familiar to me and just more like knitted into my soul somehow from many years of exposure. and seeing them that's probably 7 years ago or something in London, and just it was a very ear-opening experience.
I have 2 more that are not related to music.
Thank God. All
right. 2 movie trilogies that were shot in New Zealand. Which one would you rather watch? Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit?
Oh, Lord of the Rings.
That's the only answer. And for everybody out there, fight me, but turning a 200-page book into a 9-hour trilogy is just rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And last but not least, if you were to go for lunch right now, which you're not because you still have to do some work and it's only 10 in London, would you rather have bangers and mash or fish and chips?
Well, I went to the pub and had fish and chips last night, so I think I'd say bangers and mash today.
Okay. So, David, enjoy the rest of your day. Do you still have an artist coming in doing some work?
I do, yeah. Not till this afternoon, though, so I've got some mixing this morning and then a session tonight, yeah.
So enjoy your day and hope to see you on European stages sooner than later.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Thorsten.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.